I never considered myself the type to get involved in neighborhood drama. I'm an architect who works from home, keeps to himself, and follows the rules. But everything changed when Cheryl Danvers became president of our Oak Ridge Heights HOA. Most people call her Cheryl to her face, but everyone else calls her Karen behind her back. It's not her real name, of course, but she fits the stereotype so perfectly that it might as well be her legal title. When I bought my craftsman-style home 3 years ago, the HOA president at the time was a retired judge named Harold Monroe. He ran our meetings with calm efficiency and a sense of fairness. Last year, he relocated to Florida, and Cheryl seized the opportunity. She campaigned aggressively, promising to restore property values and enforce standards. What she really meant was unleashing a reign of terror over our once peaceful community. It began with petty violations. Mrs. Lou, who lives down the street, was fined because her garbage can was visible from the sidewalk for an hour too long. The Thompsons received a warning because their holiday lights stayed up 3 days past the January 5th deadline. I managed to stay under her radar for months by following every absurd rule laid out in the HOA's 32-page covenant. That changed in spring. I had, or rather, used to have, a beautiful maple tree in my backyard. It was already there when I bought the house and stood perfectly to shade my home office during the sweltering afternoons. According to my property survey, it was well within my property line, about 4 feet from the fence I shared with Cheryl. One Saturday morning, while sketching designs at my desk, I heard an unfamiliar mechanical sound from the backyard. Curious, I went to the window. What I saw made my heart drop. Cheryl was standing in my backyard, directing 2 men with chainsaws as they cut limbs from my maple tree. I nearly dropped my coffee. I rushed outside. "What do you think you're doing to my tree?" I yelled. Cheryl turned to me without the slightest hint of surprise. She wore oversized designer sunglasses despite the cloudy sky, her hair in a perfectly styled bob, clipboard in hand like a maestro leading an orchestra. Only this was vandalism, not a symphony. "Good morning." The branches were hanging over the property line and dripping sap on my new patio furniture, she said sweetly. The HOA bylaws clearly state in Section 12, Paragraph 4, that no foliage shall encroach on neighboring properties. "That may be true," I replied, trying to remain calm, "but you can't just come onto my property and start cutting down parts of my tree. That's trespassing." Her smile didn't falter. "Actually, as HOA president, I have the authority to address violations directly. I sent you a notice last week. There had been no notice." "We both knew that. Ask your contractors to stop cutting immediately," I said firmly. "If trimming is required, I will hire someone myself. You're on my property without permission." Cheryl waved her hand casually. "Well, since we're already here," I pulled out my phone. "If they cut one more branch, I'm calling 911 to report trespassing and property destruction." That got their attention. The workers shut off their chainsaws and looked at Cheryl. Her face turned red, not with shame, but with fury at being challenged. "Fine," she snapped. "You'll be hearing from my attorney. And expect a violation letter for this unkempt tree. You have 3 days to address it." They left, but not before taking several large limbs from my beautiful maple. I documented everything, photos, videos, and even the property line markers. That afternoon, a formal HOA violation notice appeared in my mailbox. It cited Section 12, Paragraph 4, and Section 8, Paragraph 2 about aesthetic standards. The notice ordered me to remove the diseased and unsightly tree within 7 days or face daily fines of $100. The tree was healthy. I knew that. But more importantly, it was mine. I decided to fight back. First, I hired an arborist who confirmed that the tree was healthy, though now unbalanced due to the unauthorized trimming. Then, I reviewed our HOA bylaws in detail. While they mentioned vegetation encroachment, they said nothing about healthy trees within one's property. More importantly, any HOA board member with a personal interest in a dispute must recuse themselves from enforcement. I drafted a formal response to the board, excluding Cheryl, detailing the incident, the arborist's report, and relevant bylaws. My tone was firm, but professional. Surprisingly, several board members reached out privately, apologizing. Apparently, Cheryl had made a habit of acting unilaterally. They assured me that no action would be taken. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 3 days later, I had to visit a construction site. I left home early and returned around 2 p.m. As I turned onto my street, I noticed something was off. A truck from Danvers Discount Tree Service was parked in front of my home. Men were actively cutting down my entire maple tree. I slammed on the brakes and jumped out. Cheryl, dressed in designer workout gear, was overseeing the operation like a general surveying a battlefield. Her red BMW convertible sat across the street, parked for maximum view. "Stop!" I yelled, sprinting toward them. "Stop right now." The men paused. Cheryl stepped forward, holding a document. "I have HOA authorization to remove this hazardous tree," she said smugly. "Safety concerns override homeowner permissions." I snatched the paper. It was HOA letterhead, but only bore her signature. Emergency action required 3 board member signatures. Also, the safety concern was a lie. "This is forged," I said. "Tell them to stop, or I call the police." "They're almost done," she shrugged. "It was compromised already." "Because you compromised it." I pointed to the workers. "This woman doesn't have legal authority. Continue, and you'll be liable." One of them shut off his chainsaw. "Ma'am, you said you had the homeowner's consent." "I mean authorization." Cheryl barked. Just then my phone rang. It was Thomas, one of the other board members. "Hey," he said urgently. "Lisa from across the street just called. Is someone cutting your tree?" "Yes." Cheryl brought a crew. She forged an HOA letter. "We never approved that. I'm calling the others. I'll be right there." When I hung up, the workers were packing their gear. Apparently, the word forgery had done its job. But it was too late. 80% of the trunk was already gone. "You're making a big mistake," Cheryl said through clenched teeth. "This neighborhood has standards." "No, you made the mistake. Trespassing, forgery, destruction of property." A creaking sound interrupted us. The maple tree, now unstable, began to lean. Cheryl was too busy ranting to notice. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer about your obstruction of HOA busying." Crack. The tree snapped. Not toward my house. Not toward the workers. Not even toward Cheryl herself. No, it fell directly across the street. Right onto Cheryl's shiny red BMW. The roof crumbled. The windshield shattered. The car sagged under the weight of the fallen trunk. Silence. Then my car. "My car. Look what you did." "What I did?" "You trespassed, forged documents, and cut down my tree. This is on you." Her expression twisted. Shock, rage, panic. The workers quickly distanced themselves. Their foreman was already on the phone, likely to his insurer. Neighbors emerged. Thomas and 2 other board members arrived. They looked stunned. The workers were quick to explain they'd been told they had authorization and homeowner consent. Cheryl's phone rang. She stepped aside. "Yes, they destroyed my car." "No, technically I didn't have written permission. But as HOA president, I have authority to—" "What do you mean you won't cover it?" "It's their tree." "Negligence?" "I'm not." "Hello." Her face paled. In the days that followed, everything moved fast. My insurer was cooperative after reviewing the evidence. The HOA held an emergency meeting. Cheryl was unanimously condemned. The forgery, unauthorized actions, and abuse of power were too much. A week later, I received a certified letter. It contained a formal apology, a check for nearly $20,000, covering the tree's appraised value and landscaping restoration, and confirmation of Cheryl Danvers' immediate removal as HOA president. I was reading that letter on my front porch when a rental SUV pulled into Cheryl's driveway. She stepped out, sunglasses shielding her face despite the fading light. When she saw me, she hesitated, then quickened her pace toward her door. I raised my iced tea in a small salute. She flinched, fumbled with her keys, and disappeared inside. My front yard, now missing a tree, had never felt so peaceful.